So my name is Mariska. I run the lifestyle department at Solarpop, which entails toy and baby and branded licensing products, and we're getting into home items. Been there for about 3 years, and looking forward to branching Solarpop out.
My name is Stefan. I'm also one of the product managers at Solarpop. We see ourselves as one of the premier distributors for tabletop games and toys in South Africa. I focus on gaming systems, and my specific area of focus is all the trading card games and role-playing games. And I've been involved in the industry full-time now for 10 years.
So for me, definitely it's the community and the storytelling of Japanese culture. So if we had to look at the anime and manga side, the anime always has complex sort of themes, and generally the younger generation and even adult generation can relate to sort of the theme and the complex sort of whatever's happening within the show. And the community of the Japanese people is just amazing. They're very welcoming, and I don't know, I just get a good feeling from Japanese people. So I've been around them for when I go to shows and stuff. But yeah, definitely they bring on a whole new world of just to create a world of imagine, and yeah, that's the part of me that's really I love.
So what I like most about Japanese culture, I like the structure. I think in my personal life, I'm very much a perfectionist. I'm someone that likes routine, and I think that's something that's very prevalent within Japanese culture. Things are very precise, whether it is the architecture or whether it is just the planning more in an urban area, everything down to the cuisine. I feel there's a lot of thought that goes into the big details, but as well as all the small little details, and that's something that I can appreciate. Those are things that I look for when I am looking at a product, or even how I manage my personal life. Something I also admire about them is just their strong sense of duty. They are, very hard workers, and it's definitely one of my destinations on my bucket list that I would love to travel to at some point in time, experience all these things firsthand. If I may start with this one, so something that we experience within South Africa is we have a very fast-growing middle class. That obviously means that there's a lot of people that have disposable income that they can spend. That's a big consumer group that you're able to appeal to. I think if you also contrast that to the increasing globalization of trade that's taking place, and the increased exposure to different ideas and products from abroad, mostly through the access to the internet, it just gives you an opportunity to, allow different markets to come together. Trying to strike the balance kind of between what is maybe Western ideals and traditional concepts that you find in a place such as Africa. So I said, it's the growing middle class is definitely an opportunity there. People that weren't familiar with particular products before. When there's not an established market, it really gives you an opportunity to step into that open space. And especially when things aren't as established there, it really gives you room to be a bit creative in terms of trying to build that industry up from the ground.
Definitely, I share Stefan's sentiments. And what I'd also like to add is, where there's opportunity and, growth is anime and manga actually is definitely something that is on a lot of buyers' radar at the moment. And they're definitely looking to branch out. I mean, Solarpop especially has received a lot of wish lists. So to get this into the country, and there's definitely a lot of opportunity with this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think Mariska make a good point, especially around the manga and the anime. Because Africa has a rich storytelling culture, but it's mostly oral and visual, not so much in the past had focus on the written word. And I think that's where something that, visually striking things that a lot of Japanese products have, that's where they can find this perfect cross, as I said, between a different consumer market you find in Africa with products produced in the East.
Correct. Yeah. So definitely counterfeit products. That is a big challenge. But that the solution there is just making sure that you are working with the officially licensed supplier that has all the approvals and, doesn't spin you a story about why they can't provide license certification and that sort of stuff. Steph, do you...
Yeah, I think if this is an aspect for me where I think the South Africa's economic history actually plays a role. Due to the high inequality that was experienced in Africa in the past and is still something that's prevalent to this day, sometimes the access to information is not what you'd imagine, and as well finances. And what that typically does is people might just gravitate towards the least expensive product that they come across. But if they don't have a frame of reference to say, but this is not good quality and it's cheap, therefore to tell me it's not a genuine thing. If they don't know that this is drawing on a registered or protected property, they might not know. So they can't put the two and two together. We obviously, as the industry, would be experienced. I'd say to you, that's definitely a knockoff just from the look of it. Or in other cases where it's a good counterfeit, I would say to you, but the price as well is a giveaway for me. And obviously in a market that is price sensitive such as ours, sometimes it might force people to just try and make the decision where they say, I'm just going to go for the thing that I can afford. So the way that you combat that is obviously making sure that there is consumer education about where the trademarks or other forms of intellectual property are present in the market. As Mariska's mentioned, there might be licensing agreements. And also just making sure that the price is right for your local market. A product a $50 product that might easily sell in Germany or the United Kingdom or in America will have a very hard time moving the same amount of quantities in South Africa. So it's finding the right product mix, the right licenses that you think have appealed to local consumers, and making sure that the prices of those products also make sense for the local people. Being at the southern tip of Africa, we typically pay a lot more to bring products in than if they just hop from one country to another on the same continent. And that's something that adds to it. So make sure that your products are not priced in such a way that it makes it an easy decision for a consumer, whether they are knowingly or unknowingly just opting to buy whatever the cheaper one might be. And that in many cases could be a counterfeit version of a product.
And I'll add on to what Steph just said now is you also have to ensure that you understand your market correctly so that you don't sit with a warehouse full of stock that's not selling. So, that's a big thing that we always as Solarpop look into is making sure that we understand our market, we understand the trends, and, we focus on those. And as Steph said, making sure it comes in at the right price point. So, yeah.
I can speak a little bit about this because it's something that I've been involved in the past. One of the great things obviously gives us opportunities to participate in initiatives like this. I remember last year when we were invited and we spoke at the roundtable discussion specifically around intellectual property, licensing and counterfeit products. It exposed me to other people in the industry. Experts, other businesses that face similar challenges such as ours. And it's good to know that you're not the only ones, seeing particular stumbling blocks along the way. But then it can be a bit of a meeting of minds. You can share ideas about what the potential solutions are, bringing all the different industry players together. And I know very recently, Jetro, through their Japan Street initiative, helped us broker an introduction with a supplier that we on our own had a very hard time getting a hold of in order to kind of state our business case to be able to start bringing their products in. And that really felt like a breakthrough for us. So I think partnering with Jetro just allows us to further down the line partner with other people that we ordinarily may not have had a channel of communication with. So I mentioned at the start that I've been in the industry for 10 years. I was there really when things were much smaller than they are right now. And one of the key things that you need to keep in mind with South Africa, I've mentioned, for example, the inequality, both in terms of the access of information, other resources like finances as well. People don't necessarily have a massive broadband penetration. So you need to think about how the ways that you do your marketing. But in the absence of that, what South Africa does have, it actually has one of the largest mobile phone penetrations in the world. So if you think about the fact that people in some form or another do have access to a device, a small device in the palm of their hands that you can market to, you can strike a good balance between building communities and marketing via online as well as in person. I think there's a relatively large social media following in South Africa. And you can utilize that, for example, to promote the analog games, which is an area that Solarpop specializes in. All our products are physical. It's toys, they are board games, they are card games, they are role-playing games, or physical merchandise like stationery and backpacks. But even in the absence where people don't have access to large shopping centers, you can still organize a lot of community events. We can do those on a small scale, whether that be at a local store, allow them to build their own centralized community around a particular product or like-minded individuals. You can do those at maybe a local community hall. We, for example, started an initiative called the Festival of Games, because we know not everyone is able to go to a large format event like a gaming convention, something like Comic-Con. They don't necessarily have a local gaming store in the area, but there's definitely a library, there's definitely a scout hall. And if you start to utilize some of those spaces in order to introduce people to games, then it allows you to, again, reach an audience that you might not necessarily have in the past. And that's really our vision that we had with the Festival of Games is, instead of trying to expose them to in places where the people coming there are already have an idea about the industry that you're involved in. They may be casual fans of the products that you sell, or they may have heard about them. This allows you to reach completely new consumer markets just by taking it to areas where they maybe not would have expected it, and they of their own would not have gone to the areas where they're already present. So you can be a bit creative about how you do these things, as I say, but I think South Africa is very much not so much an online-driven one. It is an in-person community, and you can leverage that to your advantage.
So I do think also the consumer behavior is quite important to understand, what are the consumer purchasing habits, what are the trends in South Africa at that current point, is there opportunity? That's quite an important one. So, and then also understanding, what is the competition in the market? Is there anything that is competitive to them, and what they are producing and that sort of stuff. And then, I think the big thing that Stefan touched on earlier is, our economy. That is so imperative to understand from a distributor and a supplier point of view. So, because that impacts, our pricing, profitability, future growth. Will there be a constant flow of purchase orders, and that all ties into, shipping rates and inflation and all of that sort of stuff that impacts your decision making essentially.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Mariska. I found myself sometimes speaking to suppliers, and they ask you kind of, the metrics with which they try and gauge how successful they think a product can do in your market is they look at the average population. You say to them, well, we are 67 million people. And they say, well, you're about 75% of the population of Germany. So is it realistic to expect that you would do 75% of what a German distributor might do? Yeah. Say, no, it's quite far removed. Our pie is much smaller than the German one would be. And you are still only having access to a slice within that smaller pie. And it really comes off the back of our economic history. A large segment of the population really was economically disenfranchised. They weren't part of the formal economy. And then 3 decades ago, when things changed, it's one of the things that led to us having a fast-growing middle class. But when that happens is you kind of have these sudden leaps that take place in people's economic prosperity. And it impacts their spending patterns. If you were to look at me, I grew up with board games and I grew up with toys. So I've naturally progressed into purchasing into those products as an adult because I had access to them as a youth. And I can tell you, it's something that I would purchase for my children in the future as well. But if your parents perhaps never had any toys or things, and then suddenly they find themselves with newfound wealth, there's a very quick jump. They maybe go, and the first purchase they make might be a console for your children. So your children go from not having toys to suddenly having an expensive gaming console. And then that's a big jump. So there's not that slow progression that necessarily takes place if you think about traditional consumer products that might be out there in the market. And that's something to just keep in mind. And at the same time, while there are suddenly a large amount of people that now have joined the middle class, there's still a larger amount that don't have access to these things. There is a lot of inequality. There's a lot of economic difficulty where a lot of people's primary concern is just day-to-day survival. That is not the type of person to which you're able to sell toys, games, or expensive branded merchandise. They will really go for whatever is the most affordable product that they can get their hands on. And that often would be something without a license attached to it. So it's just something to keep in mind. The overall segment that you can realistically appeal to is much smaller than most people tend to think if you simply looked at the more affluent areas in the country, the large metros, as well as the total population.